sir, you started streaming in YouTube?
Started, sir.
Good day, ma'am.
It's not visible, sir. Now it's okay.
Madam?
Yes, sir.
Visible, ma'am?
Good afternoon.
Yeah. Good afternoon, ma'am. Madam, had a good day. It is morning for you, right? So, how are you?
I'm sorry, my connection's not brilliant, but we're well, thank you. I'm just waiting for Richard, but we're very well, thank you. How is your workshop going?
Yeah, it's going fine, ma'am.
Oh, good.
With all your support, yeah, it's going fine.
Oh, brilliant.
So thank you for joining in advance.
That's okay. Are we expecting many people today?
Yeah, because we are given in Zoom as well as in YouTube. The Zoom link is only for speakers and to main guests only. Other participants are viewing this in the YouTube link.
Okay.
The madam is asking
So
how
by
many people.
IST 2 by 2 p.m. we can start the session because others are viewing it on the YouTube.
Okay. That's great.
Yeah, Mr. Richard is joined or you said to join?
Good morning.
Oh, good morning, Richard.
Hi, Lizzie. How are you?
All right. I think we're okay, aren't we? We're just waiting for a few more people. Give it a few more minutes.
Hello, sir. Sir, welcome, Richard, sir. Sir, this is Nagarajan from India, sir. And exactly by 2 p.m. IST, we will start the session. So it is 9:30 a.m. for you, right?
That's correct.
It's
Yeah.
9:30 a.m. for you.
It is.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly by 9:30 we will start by your time.
That's good.
Another 7 more minutes. We will join, let others also join on this. Thanks, sir and Elizabeth madam, for extending your support towards organizing this program.
It's absolutely our pleasure. It's nice to be joining you.
Yeah. Because as we discussed, right, publication means it is not only research publication, right? Case center is one of the center which focuses on teaching case publications. That is why we are very much eager to learn from you, because it will be a wonderful opportunity for the participants to know the activities and publication possibilities in case.
It's we see that we see teaching cases, writing a teaching case as an alternative distribution or an additional distribution outlet for research, not being in competition with research cases. It's possible for both to coexist.
Correct.
And to support each other.
Yeah. Yeah. So the focus will be on publication of case studies, not on research cases.
Not on research cases, on teaching cases.
Yeah, teaching cases, yeah.
Cases for teaching in the classroom.
Correct. Because now case study approach is followed not only by management department, even all fields of study are now focusing on case study, because it's one of the application oriented, right?
Excellent. Because
we teach for engineering students, we teach medical. Yeah, we teach medical students, agricultural students, where we use case study approaches also.
Yeah. Do you get a good response from students?
Yeah, we have 45 department of study at Annam University. 45 departments of study are focused, and there are nearly 25,000 students on regular courses. And in distance education, we have approximately 3 students per year in distance education. So after this COVID pandemic, we extend the invitation to Mr. Richard and Ms. Elizabeth to make a visit to the university campus so that we can look into collaborative joint efforts.
How is the conference going? Are you having a successful conference?
Yeah, it is going fine. All the speakers, international speakers, all the participants, they are all very happy and they are joining on time. And a lot of learning are taking place. Yesterday feedback was fine. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, good.
For every reason, we have so that the faculty is faculty member Dr. Jaykumaran, who has joined with us.
Hello, sir. Good morning for you.
Good morning. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, fine, sir. Doing well.
Good.
Hello, ma'am. Good morning,
Hello.
ma'am.
Good morning.
For us, good afternoon. It's afternoon here.
Of course.
When all the participants come, we'll begin by 2 p.m. Indian Standard Time and 9:30 by your time.
In another 3 minutes time, we will start the session.
Yes.
Sir Jaykumaran, sir, thanks for joining with us, sir.
It's my pleasure, sir.
Because even though we are on the same university, same department, we are working remotely now because of COVID. So we take online classes. And so we are only virtually meeting. And Annam University is one of the largest in Asia's residential university. hope you might visit the website. So almost 1,000 acres we are spread across, and we have all fields of cutting spread over here. So usually we put all the participants in mute when the session started. So the moderator will introduce, we will start the session, and questions from YouTube and questions from Zoom will be moderated by the moderator, and you can take your own time to have the presentation.
Светочки дарим на 2000 котей покушать в интерконтинентальном.
Sir, Jackman sir, it's time we can start, sir. Richard sir, shall we?
Yes, sir.
Richard sir, Elizabeth ma'am?
Yes, sir. Shall I begin, sir?
Sir?
Shall I begin
Sir,
now?
Mr. Richard, shall we start? Yeah, fine. Elizabeth ma'am, it's okay, shall we start?
It's okay. I'm okay.
Yeah. Yes, sir,
Okay.
Jackman sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, dear friends, good afternoon. Today, we are having the second afternoon session of the second day of this international online workshop. And this session is going to be headed by Dr. S.K. Nagarajan, and I am Dr. M. Jayakumaran, acting as a moderator for the session. Our speaker for today's session is the director of the Case Center, Mr. Richard McCracken, and will be assisted by Ms. Elizabeth THORNE, conference and event assistant at the Case Center, United Kingdom. The Case Center is a not-for-profit organization and a charity dedicated to promoting the case method worldwide. They support case teachers and writers through training programs, scholarships, and journals, as well as reward excellence in the field through their annual awards and competitions. They are based in UK. Richard is a regular presenter at conferences and workshops. He also chairs the Case Center's annual awards and competitions and is judge on both EFMD and CEIBS case writing competitions. His career has also covered broadcast and print, online and distance education, and intellectual property. Today, he is going to speak about the elements of good teaching case and what distinguishes a teaching case from a research case. Please feel free to ask questions to Mr. Richard at the end of the presentation or in the chat function. It is my pleasure to join among with you to listen to Dr. Richard McCracken. The session is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kumaran.
Yes, sir.
Thank
you, sir. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for that introduction. It's a pleasure to join you, and I'm just going to take a little time to share my screen now, and then we'll get started. So, I'd like to start by introducing you to the Case Center to give a little bit of context to the words that I'm going to speak. The Case Center is now almost 50 years old, and our mission, our dedication, and our reason for being is to support the growth and expansion of the case method around the world. We were set up to do that originally in the United Kingdom, and we then went on to work with schools in Europe, and now we work with more than 400 schools in countries around the world. So we represent a global community. We're a not-for-profit educational charity, and that global community includes educators, administrators, and students who teach with cases, who write cases and who learn with cases. And the cases I'm talking about are teaching cases. That is, cases which are written with the intention of being taught in the classroom. We have three main strands to our activity. We support the case method by developing skills in case writing, developing skills in case teaching, and developing a collection of cases written by a variety of educators in all countries around the world. So what I'm going to say is based on the experience of working with thousands of case writers in large, small, and schools around the world and in many different countries. So I want to start by talking about what is a case study written for being taught in the classroom. The objective of a case study is to achieve learning outcomes in your classroom. So the context of writing a teaching case is to achieve learning outcomes in your own classroom. And the context of that is within the course or module that you are teaching. So those learning outcomes will be derived from the overall objectives that you have for your course or module. And one way of doing that, I'm sorry, I think I may have got the wrong, excuse me a moment. Oh, yes. And one way of doing that is to use your connections among your local business community or among your alumni. It's a very strong link, and one of the things that I'll be talking about as I go through this presentation is the other impacts that writing a teaching case may have beyond the classroom. We'll be looking at that in more detail as we move through. So the cases that I'm talking about are teaching cases. The objective, as I just said, is to achieve the learning outcomes, and the context is within the course or module that you are presenting. That means that they're very different from research cases. Many people, and I think some of you may be more familiar with research cases, where the objective is not to achieve the learning outcomes, but to explore a research question. And in that, research cases are much more closely aligned to writing a research paper for journal publication. And the context there is that the research cases are part of a program of research and are capturing a research objective as opposed to a teaching objective. So having said that, let's get moving by looking at some of the characteristics of writing a teaching case. A teaching case, unlike a research case, does not tell the full story. It tells an engaging story, but it withholds the crucial element, mostly around a decision point, at which point the teacher in the classroom engages with the students in leading a discussion where the students work together to fill in that missing piece of the story to reach a decision that the protagonists in the story need to take in order to move their company or move the situation forward. So the first thing in writing a teaching case is to find an engaging story that you want to tell, one that brings out elements of theory that you're engaging with the students in your course module, but also a specific and detailed and engaging business scenario that the students can explore safely within the context of the course and in the classroom, ready to prepare them to move into business when they graduate. The story really benefits from having an engaging protagonist. Students are asked in the class discussion to take the part of the protagonist, to imagine themselves into the protagonist's dilemma and to find a solution. And that is much easier for them if you find someone who is really engaging. Use your connections in order to find that. You may have alumni connections. You may be doing some work with local business leaders and business practitioners. Use those connections. Don't feel that you have to write a case about a world-leading or a huge multimedia or a huge multinational company. The best stories are written about people and events that you really understand from the inside. So use your own existing connections to write a case that's really engaging. It's always best to open your case with some attention-grabbing detail that engages the students from the beginning. And to end it with a challenge or a conundrum, as I've said, something that leaves a little bit of a cliffhanger that the students have to, students are engaged in by wondering, well, what happens next? Well, what happens next really is the discussion in which the students work together to fill in that missing gap, to answer that challenge or solve that conundrum by working together using their skills, the skills that you have taught them in the course of the curriculum that you're teaching, and with your support in bringing to their attention theory that may be helpful in resolving the issue. One way of engaging attention is also to vary the message a bit so that the situation is described in different ways and the situation is illustrated by different types of support materials. And by including other media such as video recordings, perhaps some examples of the company's products or the company's logo, some interviews with the protagonists themselves, you really start to add to the engagement. So include other media where that's possible. And then I've left the two perhaps most important things of all to the end. Once you've written your case, teach it in your own classroom, and I'd suggest at least twice. And then revisit the case in light of your experience of teaching it in your own classroom, amend it. Some bits you may realize don't quite work in the way that you had intended or hoped. Go back and adjust the case, re-edit it, and then teach it again, and then re-edit and improve it again in light of that second teaching session. One thing that really helps there is to ask a colleague to sit in on your teaching of the case to give you some feedback on how the case works, because quite often if you're really engaged in teaching the case yourself, you're so focused on the classroom management that you have little time to take that objective view that really helps improve the editorial process. So having a colleague sit in and give you feedback from a more objective standpoint can be really helpful. And then finally, include a teaching note. And that's so important that I'm going to talk a little bit about teaching notes and what they are and how they help in a separate slide. So the teaching note is really a kind of user's guide or a manual for educators that gives them lots of background that gives them an advantage against the students, because then they know more about the background of the case than the students do, and it gives them tips. It may be tips on how to teach in the classroom by giving feedback on how the case has played in the classroom previously and typical student reactions, so that teachers can prepare properly before the teaching session. It also talks about links to theory, links to popular textbooks, and how the case fits into the curriculum. So the teaching note really is an essential piece of accompaniment to the case itself. It's integral to the case, even though it's delivered as a separate document. Many case writers start by developing the teaching note and use that in order to guide their writing of the teaching case. It's clear from our experience that faculty selecting a case to teach in their own classrooms prefer cases with teaching notes because it gives them more of an indication of what the case is really about, and it helps them teach it properly to their own students. It gives them a sense of confidence and reliability about the case that the teaching note is written about. So when you're preparing your teaching note, include a summary of the case, the learning objectives that the case is best suited to deliver, and a lesson plan which allows and supports teachers in structuring their lesson. It's really important to get the maximum benefit from a case that the teaching session in the classroom is properly structured, and the teaching note and lesson plan that's included in it really supports teachers in doing that. It also identifies the student categories and the level at which the case is being designed to operate and at which it operates best. So, for example, a case may be identified in the teaching note as working really well at undergraduate or postgraduate or executive level. It also shares that experience that I mentioned of your own experience as the case author of teaching the case previously. It identifies some confusions that sometimes arise with students, some typical reactions, so that you can prepare for student reactions and have a fallback position, and that helps you navigate the discussion and facilitate it to a proper conclusion to deliver the teaching objectives that you really want to deliver. It really gives the teacher an advantage as measured against a case that doesn't have a teaching note. A case without a teaching note is much harder work for the teacher to work with. So the benefits of the case method is that in teaching cases in class discussion, you really develop skills that affect the student's employability. It really supports and exaggerates and emphasizes those skills that employers are most looking for. That is communication, both written and oral, the ability to analyze a situation and a problem and to work in teams to come up with a response to that, to prepare a presentation and a set of opinions, and to back those in the face of critical discussion. They are really multifunctional skills that employers really value. I've spoken so far about the class and the benefit of writing a case and then teaching it in your own classroom, but there are many other benefits that come from the process of writing a teaching case, and we're going to explore those now. So I think there's a natural life cycle to writing a teaching case. First of all, in the research you get the benefit of really exploring a practitioner's scenario from the inside and working with them closely to explore that and to write it up and capture it. And here I would say that sometimes people talk about research and writing a teaching case as being two separate and possibly conflicting actions. Our view is that that's not the case. Our view is that when you do some research, you don't restrict or you have an opportunity not to restrict the output and the distribution and dissemination of that research just to either writing a research paper or writing a teaching case. Our view is that actually there are multiple possibilities of disseminating your research. So you do your research, you may capture it by writing an article for publication in a peer-reviewed journal. You may also be interviewed by your local newspaper or appear on radio or write a teaching case. So a teaching case, writing that teaching case is broadening the impact and broadening this dissemination of your research work, not restricting it and then not in conflict with it. So you write your case as a piece of research output. That impact is to bring your research to a wider audience. The next part of the circle is that you teach that case in the classroom. And there we can see that there's a clear maximization of impact in the classroom because students have a different response to a teacher who is working with their own case. The teacher knows the case more intimately and performs better in the classroom. The students have a different view of the teacher because they recognize that the teacher is someone who really understands the situation from within and has worked with and has strong contacts and links with the protagonists in the case that they're discussing. And so there's another point of impact. And quite often that classroom impact is the end of the story. But what I want to share today is that the end of the story isn't in the classroom, because when you go on to distribute the case, as you may choose to do through the case centre or other distributors, that widens the impact still further. That carries your case into classrooms in other schools around the world, and that has a widening impact, a really substantial impact on three main players. On the author's own personal brand and reputation, and quite often case authors are invited to participate in conferences or to visit other schools, or are contacted by different companies offering them the opportunity to do some more research to write other cases. It has an impact on the school's reputation and brand because it carries your school's logo and your school's reputation into the classrooms at other business schools around the world. It can also be used to support, for example, bids for accreditation. And it's very good to see that the 2020 AACSB 2020 standards make specific provision for case writing to be included as part of an accreditation submission. And thirdly, the third impact is that distribution also carries the logo and the brand of the company about which the case is written into classrooms around the world. And many companies see that as a worthwhile impact and a reward really for collaborating with you in writing the case in the first instance. It enhances their image. It can help them in recruiting new graduates if they're looking to recruit. And many of them actually take the case and use it in two ways. They use it as a recruiting or an induction tool so that new recruits joining the company may be given the case as a way of understanding the company culture. And they also use it as a self-reflective tool to examine their performance in light of the case. If you like, they teach the case to themselves. They say, if we had the opportunity to visit that scenario again, would we have responded to it in the same way that we did, or could we do things differently the second time round? What lessons can we learn from the case that's been written about us, and can we change our company culture or our company structures or the way in which we analyze things? So that distribution brings a really widening impact. And part of that is to strengthen the links between the business school and the faculty member who's written the case and the company about whom the case has been written. That then develops further opportunities to work with that company. The trust that was established in order to write the case in the first place has been strengthened. So you have the opportunity to do deeper research into that company. Quite often, and this is a normal pattern, quite often companies will open themselves, having established that understanding at a much more deep level. They will open themselves to a deeper research, to being visited again to write a second case. They may offer more collaboration with the school or with the faculty member. You can invite them into the protagonists into your classroom, which really adds to the impact in the classroom, so that they speak about their experience of the scenario with your students. Answer questions that students may have about that scenario. They may offer internship possibilities. They may offer some sponsorship to the school. And so those links are really beneficial. And in return, the school may have a greater impact on the business culture and the performance of businesses in its region or local area. So all around, there are really many benefits to be found by writing teaching cases. If you're thinking of embarking on writing a case, then you may be interested in some recent case writing trends. Online and hybrid classes, which we've all become used to in the last year of lockdown, they require cases that are much more granular, that rather than reading 20 or 30 pages as a continuous piece of prose, if you break those cases down into smaller chunks of material, it makes it easier to structure the online teaching session and to have different activities that break up the continuous text. As people, we're not happy in reading long cases online. We're much happier and we work much better if we're concentrating on smaller pieces of text that are broken up by other activities, such as polls or group activities. Cases that are integrated in that kind of way and structured and have expanded teaching notes. So if you're writing a teaching note for a new case, I think it would be only sensible to add a section on how that case works and may be approached as an online teaching experience in addition to a face-to-face teaching experience. New formats are becoming popular. Comic strips, a bit like the Superman comics, they work very well because they convey a lot of information using a very few words. Multimedia is becoming more popular, although it requires a lot of investment and may be expensive. And as a real kind of blind side, blue skies possibility, very few schools are starting to experiment with virtual reality, a bit like the computer games where you wear a virtual reality mask and really go in a three-dimensional kind of way, really enter the scenario. They have been very powerful, but again, that technology requires a lot of resource and is really just being, we're really just dipping our toes in the water of what the possibilities are with virtual reality cases. But I'm sharing these as a way of encouraging you to think beyond the normal conventional text case. Another thing that I'd really encourage you to do is to write local but think global. Write about cases that are in your area or which feature protagonists who are alumni of your business school. Those cases are really popular. Faculty in other countries find that, for two reasons, find that cases written in a different country really play well in their classrooms. First of all, we all operate now in a global economy where we may have to work with people from different countries and with different cultural backgrounds. And those cases help students adjust and prepare for the experience of working in multinational teams at a distance. And secondly, the business school classroom now is increasingly multinational, with students crossing frontiers to enroll with at schools in other countries. Sometimes those students traveling from, or those international students, find it difficult to settle in a classroom in a different country because the cultural expectations are difficult. for them to adjust to. They may be unused to speaking in front of a group of peers in a classroom, for example. But a local case, a case that comes from their home country, gives them a kind of different status in the classroom, where they can operate as experts in the case, and that gives them some sense of confidence and encourages them to participate in that class discussion, which contributes such a lot to the case method. So write local, think global, and you'll find that that actually international teachers are looking for cases like that, and they can be extremely popular. Talking of popularity, what are the common features of popular cases? Well, we run several awards and competitions which recognize the impact that case writers make to the world of education, and some of those are based on the number of adoptions of a case. Others are much more like a conventional case writing competition. But when we analyze the winners of those awards, we find that 93% of them have teaching notes. The most popular cases in our collection, 93% have teaching notes. Around a fifth to a third have a media component of the kind I described earlier. And then when it comes to the balance between conducting field research in order to write a case or using published sources in order to write a case, they're fairly balanced actually. So between 42 and 64% of cases, the most popular cases, are based on published sources. And that can be particularly useful and impactful if the scenario is one in which the company may not be happy to take part. They may be embarrassed about something they did, they may have made a mistake, they may have behaved in a way that's not ethical. So in those kinds of situations, it's much easier, and you can make a much more impactful case if you use published sources. But on the other hand, between a third and half of cases are also based on field research. So it seems to us that both are equally rich sources of material and very valid approaches to writing a teaching case. One of the big questions that people ask is how long are the more popular cases? Well, this is interesting. I think now there is a move, especially with online, there is definitely a move towards shorter cases of fewer than 10 pages. But the most popular length is between 10 and 20 pages. And even then, cases that are longer than 20 pages are still popular at some schools. I think there's definitely a trend, though, towards the shorter end of the page length. And the most popular sectors for cases to be written about are IT, as you would expect. All of these are things that you would expect. Partly it's because they're really important, and partly it's because students are familiar with these, more familiar with these sectors and industries, and that engages them in the classroom more than others. So IT or retail, food and drink, students are very interested in food and drink. They're very interested in motors. They understand tourism and hospitality, and I haven't yet met a person who's flown who doesn't have an opinion on how an airline could operate better. So those are the most popular features of our best-selling and case award-winning cases. I hope it gives you lots to think about, and I look forward to answering any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Працюючи в медичній академії та викладаючи курси для студентів-медиків, мене зацікавила тема трансгуманізму, в першу чергу, тому що вона пов'язана з дослідженням людини Та по-друге, тому що тут можна при розвиток про майбутнє застосувати різні філософські категорії. У кінцевому
I'm terribly sorry. I couldn't hear the question very well.
Mr. Richard, good afternoon. Dr.
Good
Madhusmita Chaudhary. Yeah, sir,
good afternoon.
I just want to understand whenever we are delivering the cases to the students in the classroom, what methodology we should follow. Like I heard someone saying you find out, these models. So what exactly your methodology when you deliver these cases to the students?
Well, the cases you should look at the teaching note in preparing for your teaching session. And follow the advice that is in the teaching note. So that's part of your preparation as a teacher. Though the teaching note is withheld and used only by the teacher. The case itself should be shared with students in advance of the session, and they should come to the session really well prepared. They should be almost not referring to the text of the case at the point at which they come to the session. They should be familiar with it, with the facts behind it and the situation about it, and come with opinions about the situation that's portrayed in the case. Then in the teaching session itself, it's very good to open with a question to the whole class. And if it's an experienced class, that question may be not to the whole student body, but to an individual. What do you think this case is really about? And then you can open up the discussion from that point forward. So the role of the teacher then becomes, in a lecture, the role of the teacher really is to tell the students something. To teach by telling. In a case discussion classroom, the role of the teacher is facilitation, and rather than teach by telling, the teacher teaches by asking. And I think for me, it's the role of the question that makes the real difference between a lecture and a case discussion. So in a lecture room, if there's a question, it's generally from the student to the lecturer, and it's about understanding what the lecturer wanted to say. In a case discussion classroom, the question is directed at the students and is about exploring the opinion that the students have. And by asking the question, you drive the discussion along towards a shared understanding and a shared approach to resolving the dilemma in the case. So structure of that discussion is really important. And the technique that most case teachers have is to capture that on a whiteboard in some way, or a blackboard. And then at the end of the class, having captured the flow of the discussion, you can revisit the discussion and walk the students through the discussion to the point where they have resolved the dilemma. And at stages along that pathway, you can point out elements of theory or practice that they may have used well or overlooked. And in that review, you really start to tie the discussion back into your curriculum and your learning outcomes.
Sir, this question is in line with this previous question. Do we need to relate every case with a theoristic model?
I would say if you're teaching, yeah, if it's a teaching case. If you're teaching the case, it should be within the context of the learning outcomes that you want to deliver in that part of your curriculum.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions by the audience? Please utilize the opportunity. Participants, you can clarify any doubt regarding this session to Dr. Richard, sir.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. This is Madhya here from Manakulavan Agri Engineering College. A question from my end. It's not a question, clarification regarding where the open access sources available for free access cases. Any recommendation, sir?
Yes, we have, as part of our collection, we have many, our overall collection, which is of over 60,000 cases and perhaps up to 100,000 elements. Within that, we have many smaller collections that add up to the whole, and many of those smaller collections are of free cases. They may be more specialist collections, and I think Lizzie is putting up a link to the page on our website that takes you to those free collections. We also have a differential pricing model, which makes all of our collection available at affordable prices to schools in emerging markets. And that is also possible to access on a link to our website. I think Lizzie is putting that up as well.
So thank you very much, sir. I was struggling to find out the sources, actually a bit costly, and surfing itself is a very tedious process. For sharing this free cases, really, I'm very happy for it. So thank you very much, sir.
No, I hope you find cases that you're looking for among the free cases and get real benefit from them in your classroom.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Yes, Pragati Reddy. Yes. Any questions? Sir, I, as a moderator of the session, as a teacher, basically I'm a teacher. I have few doubts in my mind about a case study, sir. What is the life of a case, sir?
The life?
Yes, sir. How long we can use that case, sir?
Well, this is very interesting. If we look at our best-selling and most popular cases, we can see that actually it's split almost equally. About a third of them, of the most popular cases, are less than 5 years old. About a third are between 5 and 10 years old, and about a third are over 10 years old. And there are benefits to each. So if you want something that's really up to the minute, it's very possible to find cases that have been written in the last few months and are really current. If on the other hand you think, well, old cases are really they're talking about industries that may have gone. They're talking about scenarios that don't occur anymore. They may be really old-fashioned because of the technology that they describe. But the advantage that they have is that students are unfamiliar with them. So students don't come with preconceived ideas about, if you have something that's really current, the student in some circumstances knows more than the teacher. And an old case evens the playing field. You know that expression? Having an even playing field. It means that that everyone's on the same level and there are no advantages. So that can support a tougher, a less inclined discussion that is tilted in favor of one party or another. So there are advantages to using older cases as well, and we see that those are often quite popular.
Thank you very much, sir, for the explanation. But another small doubt, sir, a small clarification from you, sir. Whether we can write a off-the-chair case study, sir. based on our assumptions, based on our you said storytelling, we can do it. Whether we can do it as an armchair case studies.
Yeah. If you're thinking of writing a case, if I catch you right, you're asking about someone coming to write a case study for the first time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, we run workshops in developing writing skills, but beyond that, if you just want to generally familiarize yourself with what's required of a new case writer, we have many free resources on our website to support case writing. I think Lizzie may be able to put up that link as well. And they're very useful. So some of them are feedback from really experienced and successful case writers about their approach and tips and techniques for writing a good case. And there are other resources about more theoretical ones about the principles of writing a case and what you're trying to capture. So there's lots to explore there.
Participants, do you have any questions? Participants. Participants have asked questions. What about others? Please.
No? Well, it's been a pleasure meeting you all, and a really enjoyable session for me. I hope you've enjoyed it and it's been valuable for you as well. And I wish you well with the rest of the conference and other workshops. And thank you again for inviting Elizabeth and myself to take part. It's been a real pleasure.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for your participation. It has been a pleasure listening to you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank
Goodbye,
you,
everyone.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Sir, hello.
Sir, again, sir.
Sir, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm able to hear you.
Yes, sir. So thank you very much. I think Richard sir and Madam has left the workshop, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. He has completed his presentation, and a few participants asked questions. And myself, I also clarified with the two doubts, sir. So he has completed his presentation, sir.
Yeah, fine. Thank you very much, Richard sir, Elizabeth ma'am, and Dr. Jaykumaran sir. So thank you all, and thanks for all the participants. We will have the next session by 3:15 p.m. IST. So thank you very much all. So now we will
Thank you, sir.
leave the session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.